I've been a Canon user since I was 12 and I'm now 20, and I still use Canon now, 8 years later. This video that you're watching right now is shot on the EOS RP, and honestly I think this is the best entry point into Canon cameras if you're wanting to go down the mirrorless route. However, I will just preface this by saying that you can find some great deals on some Sonys, second hand anyway, and have really high quality cameras. The only thing that you have to accept is that you probably won't have a guarantee, but also as well as that, you'll end up in a point where you are using a second-hand piece of equipment. If you're happy using that, then go for it. I do heavily recommend it. However, if you're someone who does like having something brand new, you like having the guarantee of that safety net for the first year or two, then I would highly recommend this EOS RP. You can find it as well refurbished with a guarantee, so you might be able to do that. However, this camera for me, I ended up purchasing for £1,650 with its lens and an adapter. So for me, it was a great deal. It was my first entry point into going into more professional sort of photography. It definitely is that entryway for a lot of people. I would heavily recommend this for anyone who wants to go pro with photography, so earn some money, for example, or if you want to just take up your practice a little bit more and become a little bit more higher quality overall and just have a nice mirrorless experience through Canon. I'll give you a quick rundown of this camera. So it ends up weighing in at 480 grams with the battery. It's 26 megapixels, 4K at 25 FPS. However, it can't reach 120. So for you slow-mo lovers out there, this is definitely not the camera for you. However, if you don't mind only using 60 FPS, then that is definitely going to be a thing that you can do at 1080p, sadly not at 4K. But if you do decide that you want to spend more on that, then you can. There is some cameras, and there's one that I'll mention later on, that does do 120 FPS. But if you don't want to be spending £2,000 plus on cameras, and you don't really want to be spending that sort of money on, let's say, your hobby, or something, let's say you're entering into a professional range, then I'd highly recommend the EOS RP. So I think the best thing to talk about first is going to be videography, as I do think a lot of people nowadays are looking into cameras for that particular purpose and that specific niche. So let's give you the right away answer. This is not a videography camera by any means. Do not buy it for videography. Don't worry, move on to something else. Don't worry about this camera, because this thing will only give you 25/30 FPS in 4K and 60 FPS at 1080p. So you're literally better off buying some other cameras, and a camera that I'll mention in a moment, than this one if you're wanting to get into like film creation. But if you want to, let's say, just have a camera that does the job for things like video creation like I'm doing right now, then it will perfectly do that easily without any issues, and it will look good whilst doing it. So why did I actually buy this camera if I'm telling you these negative things? Well, for me anyway, I wanted to upgrade my camera in the first place because I wanted to actually delve a bit deeper into the photography side of business. And that started mainly with wedding photos, and that's what I did for a little bit, and it was enjoyable. However, for me, I found that the hobby that I wanted to indulge into a profession just wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy the business side of photography, I just enjoy taking the photos. However, one thing that I would definitely say is that this camera does take amazing photos. I'll show you on screen a few now of different photos that I've taken. Every single one of my favourite photos I've ever done have been from this camera. There's only one that hasn't been, and that is a really specific shot when I was in New York, and that was with an ultra-wide on my iPhone 11 Pro. So that is honestly the only time that anything's ever beaten any of my other photos, but that's just because I think the ultra-wide shot, especially back then, was such a new thing that was just so unique and just great to see. Obviously, not new in the sense of like, oh yes, ultra-wides have never existed, just new in the sense of handheld ultra-wide shots, really easy, just quick, pull out your phone, take a photo. But I would definitely say if you are wanting to take up the photography hobby, or you are just wanting to upgrade your camera, this will definitely do the trick, because the color balance on this thing isn't too bad. I wouldn't say it's amazing, so it doesn't have Canon's log type. However, it is definitely up there, and in terms of things like shadow accuracy, it's a lot better on this camera than you're going to get on pretty much any phone. Now, I would definitely say if you can get a deal for this camera, definitely go for it. I bought it at £1,600 roughly, I believe, and that came with the body, the lens being a 24-105mm, and it's one of the really nice RF lenses. I'll show you on screen now, but it's a really nice lens, very big, very weighty, and I use it all the time for everything, including recording right now. And then as well as that, I got the adapter with it that allowed me to attach some of my old lenses. So for example, the nifty 50 lens that most people will be aware of from Canon, the extremely good 50mm that's like £100, attaches to my camera, and I don't have to spend like £650 on the exact same lens, maybe a little bit better for the RF type. So I would highly recommend getting the adapter if you already have Canon lenses. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you can get it on a deal, go for it, because the lens, that adapter and this camera combined, all brand new, would have cost around about £2,300, so I did at least get a decent deal, and that was through Canon directly. So I definitely recommend trying to find something, if you can, that's on a deal for this thing. But if you are just wanting a camera, I would definitely say that the body for this is not a bad deal. Currently it's just under £1,000 in the UK, however, if you can get it for like that £900 range, I'd definitely say buy it up right away, because you can find Canon lenses, they'll work for it and do the job. You don't need this massive bulky lens, it's £1,000, there's no point if you aren't going to be taking it massively serious and doing photography all the time. Now when it comes to the EOS R lineup, I actually am a massive fan of them. I love the mirrorless range from Canon. One, just the weight difference from my 7D Mark II, just insane. The only thing I don't like is just the battery on this. The battery does die quite quickly, especially when I'm recording. I can literally maybe get like an hour and a half worth of recording before the camera needs to have its battery replaced. I don't have a secondary battery, so I literally, once I finish doing a few more recordings now, I'll have to put this in the charger, sit there for about an hour whilst it charges. It's a bit irritating, but it's something that I have to live with, so I can't really complain. But you can also get a little grip that allows you to actually grip the whole thing, as one of the biggest issues with the camera is that your pinky finger will basically sit underneath, and it can get a little bit irritating, depending on, one, how big your hands are. I've got small hands and it still irritates me, but overall, for me anyway, the main thing is that I went from a 7D Mark II, where you have all this massive amount of grip, versus this camera, where it's not much, but it does a great job because of how light it is. So I can't recommend this camera enough in terms of wanting to get an entry into mirrorless cameras, but also if you want to go from being a just main amateur photographer to wanting something that feels a little bit more professional. Feels is that main word there, I will just tell you, because you can definitely go pro with cameras that do not cost this amount of money, because again, your clients do not actually care about the spec of your camera for the most part. That's like 2% of their overall questions. Most of them will be related to how can you actually serve them with something. So yes, if you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, do subscribe for more content on the Central Perspective channel. There will be more photography content coming up throughout the year. However, this is mainly just a tech channel, talking about anything tech from Apple, Canon, or anything Android related, iPhone related, productivity, that sort of thing. So yeah, if you want to see that content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.